Okay. So last week we spoke about like, they're talking through their story and like where, what are we tracking, right? We talked a lot about what we're tracking. Yeah.
We're tracking their words, the movement of their eyes, their body.
Very good. Yeah.
Just
phrases, thoughts they have around themselves. We're tracking like anything repetitive, any huge emotional shifts, right? Like if somebody starts crying, I'm instantly going to say, close your eyes. Yeah. Right. Because we can follow the tears. Yeah. So,
well, I understand what you're saying, Cherie, but I wouldn't feel ready to do that on the first session if she suddenly started to get really emotional. And
no, we're not, it's not first session. First session is intake, right? But this is I'm giving you the step by step, like how to jump someone, right? That's, so what we're tracking, how we go about finding the moment, we kind of talked about in the last session. And in this session, we're going to talk about how to guide someone into the jump. Do you have any questions around how to find the moment?
Well, I feel that finding the moment is when there is a surge of emotion.
A surge of emotion, that's a way in. Or if they're telling a story, and for myself, I'll start seeing pictures and then it'll stop and I'll be like, that's where we go. Or if we're seeing a repetitive cycle, then we'll like start asking questions around the possible first time, like that possibly could have happened, right? Can you remember a time when you were a child? Or if they're telling an adult story and you say, close your eyes, how old do you feel? Right? And we can follow
How old do you
that back through time, through any of those avenues. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Now, I want to reiterate the difference between a quantum jump and an astral travel, right? Or astral projection. Astral projection is like a hologram. It can't pick things up, can't touch things. Yeah. Like often the first check-in is, can you turn the doorknob? Right? Because if they can turn the doorknob, they're there. Yeah. Also, if it takes them a real long time, they're probably flying and not quantum jumping. Because quantum jumping is instantaneous molecular shift. So it's just like boom, feet on the ground, right? Versus like, flying, or they might be hovering. We know that they're not going to be solid when they come in, right?
What do we do then?
We, I always say that. I always say, now listen, right? We need you all here. So I want you to make your feet heavy, right? And we're going to come down to the earth, right? And get their feet on the ground. Make sure, like if they stomp their foot, they can feel that reverberation in their leg. And that's a real experience, right? It's in the details, right? Finding that exact moment and them going and creating that portal is in the details, right?
Yeah.
So here's how we can gauge if they're in time versus memory. If they're in memory, the reel is going to be playing and it's going to kind of pick up wherever you know, if you interrupt, it's going to kind of pick right back up, right? And people are going to behave the same way, which is different than if you're in a room full of people, right? And you're walking in real time in a room full of people. They aren't all scripted, right? Memory is very scripted.
Right.
With our own very personal words.
Yeah.
Right? When we get in there, you're going to see, like, I'm usually often testing right at the beginning, right? With access to a piece of information that possibly I haven't heard before. Yeah. So if I'm kind of, if this is how my senses work, okay, right? So if I get them to open and swing the door open, and I'm sensing that the kitchen is on the right, and maybe there's a staircase and maybe a little hall and living room off to the right or left, right? Then I'm going to start asking questions, right? Is the house empty? Do you hear any other sounds? Is anybody in the living room? Is the TV on? Right? You know, is mom in the kitchen, right? So we're going to start asking some questions that are going to interrupt the replay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we're always trying to throw a glitch into the programming of what they already think they know, right? Because firstly, that adult memory is scotch taped together to make life look okay if we don't look too hard, right? So the adult version is usually that, and the child's version is usually very guttural. So when they get in here, right, that guttural space is where we're trying to work in. Right? And you can usually gauge memory if the adult goes off and starts talking. Right? Then it's like, well, where's the child? Did you forget about her while you went and told this story? Because she's like pretty scared right now. You see what I'm saying? Where in real time, like if you took someone in a house that had a person that was in danger, right? They're not going to be going off to think about what to do next.
Yeah.
Right? So we want to keep them in that active momentum that would be real time. Right? Because otherwise we're not going to change anything. Because they're just wallowing around in what they already know. Yeah?
Yeah.
Now, creating this portal, right? So we've got this person, we've got them very clear, right? Around the time frame, where we're going, what house they lived in at the time, right? We're going to have them close their eyes. And we're going to start asking questions about the house, right? So what color is the house? What's the house look like? Does it have a pointy roof? Does it have a sloped roof? What's the roof like? Right? What are the windows? Are there windows on the front of the house? What do they look like? Right? Are there shrubs in front of the house? Right? We're getting to the details. We want them to bend down, make sure that they can look down and they're seeing their feet touch the ground as though they were looking like this, not like this, right? So in memory, they can see themselves, right? We're wanting this kind of perception. Yeah. And in those details, right? We start really honing in. So say I've got somebody sitting here, we've been tracking, we know that we're going to the 5-year-old self. She's hiding in the bedroom under the bed, crying.
Yeah.
Where did you live when you were 5? Right? What state was that? What street did you live on? What did the house look like? Right? Was there a screen door? Right? All the while they're touching. Right? Put your feet on the ground. Can you get your feet on the ground? Right? Usually the portal goes from the details to the tactile when they quantum jump. It's very fast. Right? So when I feel that they're like honing in, and it's going to be like, okay, can you put your feet on the ground? Right? And it's usually like that, right?
Yeah.
Feet on the ground. Stomp your foot, right? Touch with your hands. Is it prickly? Is it soft? And we start getting that very tactile perception, right? And that's it, right? Now, people have a tendency when they're afraid to go in and out. So if you're sensing like, okay, there's too much space lapsing, they have disappeared, right? So you hone back in, hey, stomp your foot, get your foot on the ground, right? We're here to rescue this little girl, not go off in outer space. Let's go find her, right? Now, it's important to recognize the power of them doing it themselves. They have the skills already, right? So turning these skills from mental illness labels to
Brilliance.
yeah, and giving them the right words, right? Those are all in the vernacular. Yeah. Again, it's completely in the details, right? And you want their words to be able to be creating pictures in your mind. If they're in adjectives and they're in the gloss out, you're not going to get a picture. If you're not getting a picture, it's going to be hard for them, right, to gauge being in real time. So we want them to talk like they're in kindergartners. Nouns and verbs, right? Nouns and verbs. Everything's broken down to the smallest common denominator. Like fear would be, what are you afraid of? Right? What happened? Is it really fear? Is it frustration? Is it what? Right? And we break it down to the smallest common denominator, like you're in kindergarten. Yeah?
Got it.
So the door handle is often a portal within itself. So describing the handle, is it round? Is it long? Do you put your thumb on it, right? Really honing attention on the handle versus what's in the house. Because often being able to open the door can be a space. So I find through the whole process, diverting attention from the emotion of the incident, stop, to the child, right? And the child words. Right? Again, what time of day, that's super important, right? To be able to say, okay, like for them to really hone in on the moment, they have to know what time of day, right? So I've had people go in the house at the wrong time and it's empty. You're like, all right, we're going to go outside and we're going to fast forward time to that moment. And we're going to turn around and walk back in. Yeah.
We're walking in the house now.
Well, you know, when you get somebody in and, right, say they walk in, it happens. A person jumps, the fear keeps them from the very specific moment, and they may hop in the morning after everyone left work.
Oh, and there's no child.
And there's no child, right? So we are honing in on that time of day, right? And if they go in and that happens, we come back out and we reestablish, right? We're gonna jump to 3:30 in the afternoon when everybody's home from school.
Okay, so we're in the jump and say it's 9 a.m. Then we just take another little jump to 3:30.
I usually just walk out the door and walk back in.
Okay.
Right? Walk out the door, right? Look up at the sky. It's afternoon, right? And we're gonna, like the door, we're using the door as the portal through time.
Yeah.
Right? So we don't have to completely jump again. We can just walk out and come back in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good to know. Yeah.
Mhm.
Because that'll happen, right?
Right. Right. So this door is a space, right? When they get in and they can actually start moving around, we continue. Right. But this door and being able to get in, being able to maneuver the doorknob is establishing a level of truth. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So often, like I reiterated earlier before we went out, we're going to step in and evaluate what we're hearing and what we can see from the doorway. So in that, they're acclimating themselves in time. Because again, we've just gone through 2 portals. Do you understand that?
Because we jump from one time in the doorway.
Jump from 2023 to the general, right, to the house.
Yeah.
Right, and then the door is and the year, whatever, right, and the doorway is taking us into the moment.
Yeah.
So that's 2 portals.
Okay.
Right, so both of which are details, getting them to the house, right? They're traveling through time, right? And we're establishing through the details to get them to the lawn outside the house, right? I've had people jump literally out of fear and be like, there are other people that live here. Okay, right, let's back out.
They weren't in the right house?
They were in the right house, but they were in 2022, not
Okay.
right, 1990 or whatever, right? So we can truly establish that around the details, and you want to always keep them talking, right? There is a tendency to go mute. So we have to recognize that the child often did not have a vocabulary for what was happening to them. So if adult goes mute, they probably, you know, morphed into the child. So we want them to remember, you're the grown-up. We're here for rescuing. This isn't happening to you right now. Stomp your feet, make sure you're there, right? Because we want to keep that separation between the two. We don't want the adult to get sucked into the child, right? And that's where the huge amount of the emotion is. So that is what's magnetic. Does that make sense? Most modalities take us into the child self, right? So this is truly keeping that separation.
Yeah.
Right? Again, yeah. the whole time, right? We want to make sure that the child is going to allow the adult version to touch them, right? We're going to want to make sure first that they're going to respond to the voice, right? So again, this is a way we can measure whether we're really in real time or not, right? If the child is not responding, again, ghost version, not interacting, or we're playing in memory 1 or the 2, right? Because if you had a child afraid under the bed and somebody came in to rescue them and looked under the bed, there would be curiosity. There'd be some sort of interaction there. Yeah. And it would probably be shock. It would be, right? So, you know, you staying in true reaction with the child helps them stay, right? Does that make sense?
Well, what it is that you're tuning into the child and seeing how they're feeling. Like, not you, the practitioner is here in 2023. The client is back in 1960, relating to their child self in an adult way.
Yes.
And saying, I'm here. Do you want to come out? I'm here for you.
Right. Nobody's going to harm you. I
Yeah,
came
I care
here
about
to get you out of here.
Yeah.
This is over today. Right?
Yeah.
When we get them out, we want to see if they're going to take your hand, right? Because that's starting to develop trust and consent, right?
Trust
Because
and consent.
that's the big piece, is the trust and consent. So while we're doing that, we would have to think, like, if I were approaching an abused child that I didn't know, how would I do that? I'm not going to go just grab on them. I'm not going to just, like, you're going to establish, try to figure out how to establish trust, right? And consent. Because we're not going to get anywhere unless we have those 2 things, right? And we have to recognize, right, that we're not going to be finding these bubbles around a bouquet of flowers, right? So going into these moments, right, we're aware that we're going into this person's one of their most horrific moments, right? So for you, it is super important to keep your eyes open and stay in a place of mirroring, right? Now, by that place of mirroring, I mean, if your body is reacting in any way, and you're clear of what you felt like before session started, and your body reacts, right? Then you know that that's not yours. And you're like, oh, I can feel is your stomach feeling tight? It's okay. Let's take a big deep breath. Right? You know what I mean? And we're turning everything that we're feeling and sensing back out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now for them, it's going to be natural for them to walk right into the puddle of goo and become a part of the puddle, right? So we're constantly, with our words, keeping them out of the goo, right?
Mm-hmm. So I would be saying something like, okay, Jen, you're the adult here. You've got this. Make sure that you reach out to your child in a loving and caring and firm way.
Well, I would even almost be more straight and be like, All right, now you're going to go in, you're going to be the adult, and we're here to rescue this child. So this moment isn't about the adult self right now. You've had all these years to think about it, right? This child's trapped and we're going to get her out and then we'll talk.
Yeah.
Right? And all of our energy in here is to bring this child to de-escalated emotional space.
Yeah. We're going to bring her to safety.
Yeah. And we want her emotional state to de-escalate. If we can get her to play, if we can get her to laugh without it being bullshit though, right? It has to be real, right? Like there are times when I'm like, will she get on the swings? No, she doesn't want to. She won't look at me. Okay, that sign that she won't look at you means that she doesn't trust the adult. So we're working on that, right? Let's develop understanding, right? Honey, I am so proud of you. I am here today because you won this battle. You don't have to fight it anymore. You get to rest. If you come home with me, right, you are never going to have to fight a battle like that again. You can just be a child.
How does that sound? You know, how does that feel?
How does that sound to you? Right? I try to use I try to stay away from the word feel.
Okay.
Because it's a gooey word.
Yeah, it is gooey. Yeah, you're right.
So if we get into what do you think about that? Or how does that sound to you? Right? And if they're like, I don't know, right? Then you're like, okay, what are we missing?
More relatedness. You want to have more relatedness with the child.
Yeah. If they're like going, I don't know, like they're still not trusting this adult. Right? So being able to bring those two stories into unity, right, brings unity, completion into the vortex. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm just concerned that I'm concerned about the untrusting child, you know, like,
Why?
well, because we have a short period of time to do this, you know, we can't mess it up.
Oh, you have a year. What are you talking about? Right? You have a year to work with this woman. So developing the trust in each moment, right? So is that what you mean? That you feel that you are concerned about developing trust between the two in the jump?
It's in the jump. In the jump, when her adult self is there and she's trying to reach out to the child and the child is rejecting her.
Well, you got to work with it.
Yeah.
Right? You got to work with it. And that's truly tuning in to what is it that that child needs to hear right now?
Yeah.
To believe you.
Yeah.
Right? Where's the discrepancy between the two? Right? Because that's going to happen. Right? Sometimes I'll go back in and talk to the child 2 or 3 times and be like, all right, they don't believe you. So what is it? Do you not believe that you can take care of yourself well enough to care for this child? Right? I mean, if you went into a house and rescued a child from out under the bed, do you not think you would be able to know what to say to them to make them feel better? I think you're a very compassionate person, Shirley.
Yeah.
Right? We just don't want to be in hoodoo words. We want to be in kindergarten words.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, so stay out of the adjectives, stay out of the, right? We want nouns and verbs,
Yeah.
right? And, you know, so you're in there and you're like, nobody is ever going to do that to you again. I will not allow it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, you could say to the child, I could I could say to the client, say to Jen, you know, why don't you tell her that you know what happened to her?
No, not at all. Because she
No.
doesn't. That's what I mean. So I would ask, right, if the child would like to share what happened, or say, hey, I know some bad stuff happened with mom, but we're not going to tell the child that we know them, right? A child wouldn't, right? Because that gets you in trouble with the Scotch tape version, right? And we're not going to recover any memory if we tell the child that we know already.
No, that's right. Yeah.
You know, so you can say, I know dad came in your room last night, right? You know, is there anything you want to tell me about that? Right? If you're sensing like she feels dirty, right? Because often the child, will hear the child talking and the adult is kind of frozen. So I'll be like, you know, she feels dirty. What can we do to make her understand this was not her sin? Is there
Yeah.
some running water around where we can get her in there and wash some of this grossness off of her? Like, can we, while we've got her in the creek, can we explain to her that that was not her fault? She was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. She didn't do anything to cause that.
Yeah. It's not her fault at all.
Right? That's how we talk. But we have to talk like we're talking to a child that doesn't have all these conceptual thoughts, and often, right, they don't even have any words to say that.
Yeah. They don't have the language of their own body, their own body parts.
Right. They don't have words to explain what that was, right? So, you know, often we're kind of like giving them a few words, right? You know, did daddy touch you in a way that made you feel uncomfortable? Yeah. Right. I get that. I know because I was you. Right. And I know that's not your fault. See where I'm going there?
Yeah.
So just as if you had a child that got rescued from under the bridge and you're trying to talk them into trusting you enough to have a bath and a meal and a rest, same thing. Yeah?
Yeah.